My wife stood in the middle of a luxury penthouse, holding the contract that had just made her the CEO of a $20 billion company. Her family was cheering. Champagne glasses filled the table. Then, in front of everyone, Olivia grabbed a bottle of ketchup and poured it all over my black shirt, while her parents and siblings laughed so hard they could barely breathe. My father-in-law raised his glass and shouted, "To Olivia, the woman who finally escaped an ordinary husband." The entire room exploded with applause. What none of them knew was that 6 hours earlier, I had personally signed the documents that made Olivia CEO, because the company she had just taken over belonged to me. Before that night was over, everyone at that table was about to discover exactly who Kevin Lewis really was. Before I tell you what happened next, subscribe to the channel and let me know in the comments, what would you do if your own wife humiliated you in front of her entire family? My name is Kevin Lewis. I'm 43 years old, and for almost 2 decades, the world has believed that Lewis Global Infrastructure Group belonged to anonymous investors scattered across Europe, Asia, and the Middle East. The truth was far more complicated. The company belonged to me. Lewis Global Infrastructure Group wasn't just another corporation. We controlled international shipping routes connecting 3 continents. We owned hundreds of warehouses across North America. We managed freight transportation networks that moved millions of tons of goods every year. We developed commercial real estate projects worth billions of dollars. We invested in artificial intelligence systems used by ports, airports, and governments. Entire cities depended on infrastructure designed by our engineers. Financial newspapers called us one of the most powerful private corporations in the world. And yet, every morning, I drove to work in an ordinary sedan, wore simple suits, and carried an employee badge that identified me as nothing more than a senior operations executive. That anonymity wasn't an accident. It was a choice. 15 years earlier, when my grandfather Arthur Lewis passed away, he left me something far more valuable than money. He left me a lesson. I still remember the last conversation we had inside his hospital room. He looked at me with tired eyes and whispered, "Kevin, if people know who you are, they'll respect your money. But if they don't know who you are, you'll discover who truly respects you." At 28 years old, I inherited 51% of Lewis Global Infrastructure Group. The board wanted me to announce myself immediately. The media wanted interviews. Investment banks wanted meetings. But I refused. Instead, I created a completely different identity inside my own company. Only 3 people knew the truth. Me, the chairman of the board, and our attorney. Everyone else believed that the company belonged to a mysterious investment group. For years, my decision seemed brilliant. Then I met Olivia. Back then, she wasn't obsessed with luxury. She wasn't interested in designer handbags or private jets. She was simply a brilliant young manager working in our logistics division. We met during a conference in Chicago. She spilled coffee on my notebook and spent 10 minutes apologizing. I spent the next 3 hours talking to her. She was funny, smart, confident. For the first time in years, I forgot about board meetings, billion-dollar contracts, and shareholders. I fell in love with a woman who believed I was ordinary. And honestly, I loved that feeling. 2 years later, we got married. Our wedding was beautiful, nothing extravagant. Just close friends and family gathered in a small vineyard outside New York. Olivia held my hand and promised that success would never matter more than our relationship. For a long time, I believed her. But success changes people, especially when they begin to associate their worth with power. Everything started changing after Olivia's 3rd promotion. The expensive dresses appeared first. Then the luxury vacations. Then the endless obsession with social status. Conversations that once revolved around dreams suddenly revolved around titles, money, and influence. And little by little, her family made everything worse. Richard Smith constantly reminded Olivia that she deserved a richer husband. Monica criticized my car. Jason joked about my average salary. Ashley never missed an opportunity to humiliate me during family dinners. At first, Olivia defended me. Then she started laughing with them, and eventually, she stopped noticing it altogether. The woman I had fallen in love with slowly disappeared behind ambition. Meanwhile, inside Lewis Global Infrastructure Group, another battle was unfolding. Our longtime CEO had announced his retirement. For months, executives competed for the position. Board meetings became war zones. Rumors spread through every department, and Olivia was among the finalists. Night after night, she talked about nothing else. "If I become CEO, everything changes, Kevin." I simply smiled, because I already knew something she didn't. The final decision had been made weeks earlier. By me. 3 days before the announcement, I sat alone inside my office, staring at Olivia's file. Her achievements were undeniable. Her leadership was impressive, but her character had changed. For hours, I wondered if I was making a mistake. Then the chairman called me. "Kevin, are you absolutely certain?" I closed the folder and looked out at the New York skyline. Yes. The next morning, while Olivia was finishing breakfast, her phone suddenly rang. She looked at the screen. The caller ID read, "Board Chairman, Lewis Global Infrastructure Group." Her hands instantly froze. And when she answered the call, the expression on her face changed completely. Olivia stared at her phone for several seconds before finally answering. "Hello?" The smile on her face slowly disappeared, replaced by an expression of pure disbelief. I remained seated at the kitchen counter, pretending to read the morning news on my tablet, while secretly watching every reaction. Yes, sir, I'm home." A few seconds of silence followed. Then Olivia suddenly stood up. "What? Are you serious?" Her eyes widened. Across the room, I could almost hear the chairman's voice coming through the phone. "Congratulations, Olivia. The board has officially voted. Effective immediately, you are the new CEO of Lewis Global Infrastructure Group." For nearly 10 seconds, she didn't say a word. Then she covered her mouth with her hand. "Oh my God." When the call finally ended, she slowly turned toward me. For the first time in months, I saw genuine emotion in her eyes. "I did it, Kevin." I put my coffee down and smiled. "You did. They chose me." I stood up and hugged her. "I'm proud of you." For a brief moment, everything felt normal again. For a brief moment, she was the woman I had married. But that moment disappeared as quickly as it had arrived. Less than 30 minutes later, Olivia had already called her entire family. Her mother screamed over the phone. Her father immediately began talking about interviews and magazine covers. Jason posted cryptic messages on social media. Ashley sent photos of luxury restaurants where they could celebrate. By noon, our apartment looked like campaign headquarters. Flowers arrived every 20 minutes. Champagne bottles filled the kitchen island. Journalists began requesting interviews. And through it all, nobody paid attention to me. Not that I expected them to. After all, everyone believed I was nothing more than Olivia Smith's ordinary husband. That afternoon, Richard Smith arrived first. The moment he walked through the door, he wrapped Olivia in his arms. "My daughter, the CEO." Monica entered right behind him, holding expensive gifts. "I always knew you were destined for greatness." Jason looked at me and smirked. "Looks like somebody married way above his league." The entire room laughed. Even Olivia. I forced a smile. "Congratulations to your sister." Jason sat down on the couch and crossed his arms. "Kevin, now that Olivia is CEO, maybe she'll finally buy you a decent wardrobe." More laughter. Monica shook her head. "You've been carrying him for years, sweetheart." Richard poured himself a glass of champagne. "Honestly, Olivia, you've outgrown this marriage a long time ago." Olivia didn't respond. She simply smiled and took another sip of champagne. That silence hurt far more than the insults, because years earlier, she would have defended me. Now, she simply allowed it to happen. As evening approached, Ashley announced that she had reserved the private dining room of one of Manhattan's most exclusive restaurants. The future CEO deserves something unforgettable. By 7 o'clock, we were sitting on the 45th floor of a luxury tower overlooking the city. Golden lights illuminated the room. A pianist played softly in the corner. Executives, family members, and close friends surrounded Olivia. At the center of the room stood a giant screen displaying the words, "Congratulations, CEO Olivia Smith." Everyone applauded as she entered. Everyone except me. I simply followed behind her and quietly took my seat at the end of the table. For the next 2 hours, people praised her non-stop. Youngest CEO in company history. An inspiration. A visionary. A genius. Meanwhile, Richard used every opportunity to humiliate me. Halfway through dinner, he stood up and raised his glass. "I'd like to make a toast." The room immediately fell silent. My daughter worked day and night to reach the top of one of the biggest corporations in America. Everyone applauded. Richard smiled proudly. "And Kevin," he turned toward me. "Thank you for supporting her career, even if your own career never really took off." Laughter exploded around the table. Jason nearly choked on his drink. Ashley clapped. Monica covered her mouth, pretending to be embarrassed. I simply stared at my plate. Richard continued. "Olivia, from now on, you're playing in a completely different league." He pointed directly at me. "Don't let ordinary people slow you down." The entire table laughed again. This time, Olivia didn't even try to hide her smile. Something inside me broke, not because of Richard's words, but because the woman sitting next to him was the same woman who had once promised to stand beside me no matter what happened. As dessert arrived, Olivia stood up. She tapped her glass with a spoon. "I want to thank everyone who supported me throughout this journey." Applause filled the room. My parents, my brother, my sister, my mentors. Then she paused and looked at me. "And of course, Kevin." The room became quiet. Olivia smiled. "Kevin taught me something very important." People leaned forward. She picked up the ketchup bottle from the center of the table. "Some people are simply born to lead." She slowly walked toward me. "And some people," the room waited, "are simply born to remain ordinary." Before I could react, she squeezed the bottle. Cold ketchup poured over my black shirt. The red sauce covered my chest, my shoulders, and dripped onto my watch. For 1 second, absolute silence filled the room. Then chaos erupted. Richard burst into laughter. Jason pulled out his phone and started recording. Ashley pointed at me, unable to stop laughing. Monica wiped tears from her eyes. "And Olivia..." Olivia stood there smiling while everyone laughed at me. I slowly lifted my eyes and looked around the table. None of them knew. Not one person in that room knew that 6 hours earlier, I had personally approved Olivia's promotion. Not one person knew that the company she now controlled belonged to me. I stood up without saying a word. Olivia looked surprised. "Kevin, come on. It was just a joke." I grabbed my jacket. Richard laughed again. "Don't be so sensitive." Jason kept recording. As I reached the door, Olivia shouted from across the room, "Where are you going?" I stopped for a moment. Without turning around, I quietly replied, "I'm going to remind everyone exactly who owns your company." And for the first time that night, the laughter stopped. The laughter behind me slowly faded as the restaurant doors closed. For the first time in years, I felt absolutely nothing. No anger, no sadness, no humiliation, just silence. I walked through the marble lobby alone while the sound of Olivia's celebration continued 45 floors above me. Outside, Manhattan was alive. Yellow taxis crossed the avenue. People laughed on crowded sidewalks. The city moved as if nothing had happened. Meanwhile, 12 years of marriage had just collapsed in less than 30 seconds. I stopped beside my car and looked down at my shirt. The ketchup had stained the black fabric, dripping onto the pavement below. A valet rushed toward me. "Sir, are you okay?" I looked at him and forced a small smile. "Yeah, long night." He handed me my keys. As I climbed into the driver's seat, my phone vibrated. It was Olivia. I stared at the screen for several seconds before rejecting the call. A few moments later, another message appeared. "Olivia, Kevin, stop being dramatic. It was just a joke." Then another. "Olivia, my family didn't mean anything by it." And then another. "Olivia, come back upstairs." I put the phone face down on the passenger seat and started the engine. For years, I had tolerated the insults. For years, I had convinced myself that Olivia was simply changing, that success had clouded her judgment, that one day she would remember the woman she used to be. But tonight, sitting alone in the middle of Manhattan, with ketchup drying on my shirt, I finally understood something. The woman I married no longer existed. 20 minutes later, I parked in front of a small office building in downtown New York. From the outside, it looked ordinary. No giant logo, no security guards, no sign indicating that decisions worth billions of dollars were made there every single week. I took the elevator to the top floor. The office was empty except for one man, William Harrison, chairman of the board of Lewis Global Infrastructure Group. He looked up from his desk the moment I entered. Then his eyes fell on my stained shirt. He slowly removed his glasses. My God, Kevin, what happened? I loosened my tie and sat down across from him. Olivia happened. William remained silent. For 20 years, he had watched me protect my secret. He had watched me build relationships, friendships, and an entire life under a false identity. And now, for the first time, he could see that something inside me had broken. He poured 2 glasses of water and slid one toward me. I assume the celebration didn't go well. I laughed quietly. She humiliated me in front of her entire family. William lowered his head. And they still don't know. I shook my head. No. Silence filled the office. Finally, William leaned forward. Kevin, if you reveal the truth now, everything changes. I looked out the window at the city skyline. I know. Your marriage will never recover. I know. The media will destroy Olivia. I know. William stared at me for several seconds. Then why now? I slowly reached inside my jacket and placed a folded piece of paper on his desk. It was an old photograph. The picture showed my grandfather and me standing in front of the company's first warehouse 20 years earlier. I was 23. He was smiling. On the back of the photo, he had written 6 words: "Never build an empire without values." I looked at William. My grandfather didn't leave me this company so that people could use power to humiliate others. William picked up the photograph and sighed. So what do you want to do? I stood up and walked toward the massive bookshelf at the back of his office. Hidden behind a row of legal documents sat a small steel safe. I entered the code. The door opened. Inside were dozens of confidential files, ownership agreements, inheritance documents, board resolutions, legal records. Everything proving that I, Kevin Lewis, owned 51% of Lewis Global Infrastructure Group. I grabbed the largest folder and placed it on William's desk. He slowly opened it. The first page displayed my name in bold letters. Kevin Lewis, majority owner. William closed the file and looked up at me. You really intend to do this? I nodded. I promoted Olivia because I believed she was still capable of becoming the leader this company needed. And now? I looked down at the city. Tonight, she showed me exactly who she has become. At that exact moment, my phone vibrated again. Olivia, I answered. Kevin, where are you? Her voice sounded irritated. Out. You embarrassed me by leaving. I almost laughed. I embarrassed you. Don't start this again. I remained silent. She continued. Listen, tomorrow morning I have interviews, meetings, photographers. I don't have time for your little drama. My little drama? Yes, Kevin. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then she sighed. Look, let's forget tonight ever happened. I glanced at William. Then I quietly asked, Olivia, do you know who approved your promotion? She laughed. The board approved it. That's not what I asked. Kevin, stop acting mysterious. What if I told you that the person who made you CEO was sitting in this room right now? She laughed even harder. Oh, please. I'm serious. Kevin, you've lost your mind. For the first time all night, I smiled. Maybe. She sighed again. Whatever, stop acting ridiculous and come home. I looked at the ownership documents spread across William's desk. No. What do you mean, no? I'm not coming home tonight. Silence. Then her voice became cold. You're overreacting. I slowly stood up. No, Olivia. I looked directly at William. I'm finally reacting. And before she could answer, I hung up. William remained silent. Finally, he spoke. What now? I walked back toward his desk. Call every board member. He looked up. Tonight? Tonight. Kevin, it's almost midnight. I don't care. He hesitated for a moment. Then he nodded. What should I tell them? I looked at the city lights outside the window. Tell them the owner of Lewis Global Infrastructure Group is calling an emergency meeting at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. William froze. For nearly 10 seconds, he simply stared at me. Because in 20 years, I had never referred to myself that way. Not once. The owner, he whispered. Yes. He slowly picked up his phone. As he began dialing the first board member, I grabbed my jacket and walked toward the elevator. Where are you going? He asked. I pressed the elevator button. To remind everyone exactly who Kevin Lewis really is. The elevator doors opened. And less than 9 hours later, I would walk into the headquarters of Lewis Global Infrastructure Group and watch every member of the board rise to their feet. At exactly 7:53 in the morning, I stepped out of the elevator on the 62nd floor of Lewis Global Infrastructure Group's headquarters. The entire executive floor was silent. Outside the massive glass walls, Manhattan was waking up, but inside the building, tension filled the air. Employees stopped talking the moment they saw me walking down the corridor. Some greeted me politely, others simply stared. To them, I was still Kevin Lewis, a senior executive whose wife had just become the youngest CEO in company history. None of them knew what was about to happen. At the end of the hallway stood William Harrison, waiting outside the boardroom. The moment he saw me, he adjusted his tie and nodded. They're all inside. Olivia? She arrived 20 minutes ago. I took a deep breath. And her family? William looked down. They insisted on attending. They think this meeting is part of the celebration. For the first time since leaving the restaurant, I smiled. Perfect. William opened the doors. The conversation inside instantly stopped. 10 board members sat around the enormous oak table. Lawyers stood near the windows. Financial advisors reviewed documents. And sitting at the head of the table, wearing a white designer suit, was Olivia Smith. Next to her sat Richard, Monica, Jason, and Ashley. The moment Olivia saw me, she rolled her eyes. Kevin, thank God you're finally here. Jason laughed. Did you calm down after your little tantrum? Richard shook his head. Son, you really need to learn how the corporate world works. Ashley smirked. Seriously, Kevin, you left an entire celebration because of ketchup. Olivia crossed her arms. Can we please stop this drama? I have interviews in 2 hours. Nobody on the board said a word. The room was completely silent. Olivia frowned. She looked around the table. Why is everyone acting so strange? Before anyone could answer, William stepped forward. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming on such short notice. Richard smiled proudly. We're honored to celebrate my daughter's promotion. William didn't react. Instead, he turned toward me. Mr. Lewis, would you like to begin? The room froze. Olivia laughed awkwardly. Wait, why are you calling him Mr. Lewis? Nobody answered. I slowly walked to the front of the room and placed a black folder on the table. Olivia looked confused. Kevin, what is this? I opened the folder. Inside were ownership agreements, inheritance records, and decades of legal documents. Before this meeting continues, I said calmly, there's something all of you need to know. Jason laughed. Oh God, is this another one of your mysterious speeches? I ignored him. For a few seconds, I simply looked at Olivia, the woman I had loved for 12 years, the woman who humiliated me less than 12 hours earlier. Then I pushed the documents toward her. Read the first page. Olivia sighed and grabbed the file. At first, her expression showed only annoyance, then confusion, then disbelief. The color slowly disappeared from her face. Her hands began to shake. No, Richard leaned toward her. What is it? Olivia stared at the paper. This can't be real. Jason grabbed the document from her hands. 5 seconds later, his smile disappeared too. What the hell is this? William stepped forward. It is the official ownership agreement of Lewis Global Infrastructure Group. Monica frowned. I don't understand. The company's attorney opened another folder. Kevin Lewis inherited 51% of Lewis Global Infrastructure Group 15 years ago. Legally speaking, he is the majority owner and the controlling shareholder of this company. Silence. Absolute silence. Richard laughed nervously. That's impossible. The attorney slid another document across the table. These are certified court records. Ashley shook her head. No. No, this has to be some kind of joke. It isn't, William replied. Olivia looked at me as if she had never seen me before. You own the company? I nodded. I always have. Her eyes filled with tears. You let me believe. I never lied to you, Olivia. She stood up abruptly. Why didn't you tell me? I stared directly at her. Because I wanted someone to love me for who I was, not for what I owned. Richard suddenly slammed his hand on the table. This is insane. William calmly looked at him. No, Mr. Smith. What's insane is humiliating the owner of the company 12 hours after he personally approved your daughter's promotion. Olivia turned toward me. You approved my promotion? I nodded again. 3 days ago. The room became silent once more. Olivia slowly sat back down. I don't understand. You earned the position through your work, I said. But leadership is more than intelligence. It's more than ambition. It's about character. Tears rolled down her cheeks. Kevin, I'm sorry. I closed the folder. No, you're sorry because now you know who I am. Monica lowered her head. Ashley couldn't say a word. Jason stared at the floor. Richard remained frozen. Olivia stood up and walked toward me. Please, let's talk privately. I took a step back. We've had 12 years to talk. Her voice broke. I made a mistake. I looked around the room. No, Olivia, a mistake is forgetting an anniversary. I paused. Humiliating your husband in front of your family, while they laugh, isn't a mistake. It's a choice. She started crying. Kevin, please. William cleared his throat. We still have one final matter. Everyone looked toward him. The board must now decide whether Olivia Smith should remain CEO. Olivia turned around in shock. What? One by one, the board members raised their hands. The vote was unanimous. 10 votes. 0 against. William looked at Olivia. The board has decided to remove you from the position of CEO, effective immediately. Olivia collapsed into her chair. Richard stood up furiously. You can't do this. William remained calm. The owner can. For several seconds, nobody moved. Then I picked up my jacket. Olivia grabbed my arm. Kevin, please don't leave like this. I gently pulled my arm away. I spent years hiding my wealth because I wanted to know who truly respected me. I looked at her family. Today, I got my answer. Then I looked at Olivia one last time. And unfortunately, so did you. Without another word, I walked toward the door. Behind me, I could hear Olivia crying. But I didn't stop, because my grandfather had been right all along. Money doesn't change people. It simply reveals who they truly are. And sometimes, losing the person you love is the price you pay for finally seeing the truth. At its core, this story is not about money, billion-dollar companies, or corporate power. It is about the dangerous consequences of pride, the importance of humility, and the value of respecting people regardless of their social status. Kevin Lewis spent years hiding his true identity because he wanted to discover who genuinely loved and respected him for the person he was, rather than for the fortune he possessed. His journey teaches us that true character is revealed not in moments of hardship, but in moments of success, power, and influence. One of the most powerful lessons in this story is that leadership is not measured by titles, wealth, or authority. A true leader inspires others through integrity, kindness, loyalty, and emotional maturity. Olivia achieved the highest position in one of the world's most powerful corporations, yet she failed the most important test of leadership, treating the people closest to her with dignity and respect. Intelligence and ambition can open doors, but without humility and strong moral values, success becomes meaningless. The story also explores how greed and social ambition can slowly destroy relationships. Olivia was not always arrogant or materialistic. Over time, her obsession with status, luxury, and public recognition transformed her into someone who valued appearances more than loyalty. Through her downfall, viewers are reminded that success should strengthen our humanity, not erase it. The pursuit of power should never come at the cost of love, family, and personal values. Finally, this story delivers a timeless message. Money does not change people. It reveals who they truly are. Success amplifies the values that already exist within us. If someone possesses humility, success will make them more generous. If someone is driven by arrogance, success will magnify that arrogance. In the end, titles fade, fortunes rise and fall, but character, loyalty, respect, and compassion remain the true measures of greatness.